UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
Our Domex. Fellam sa විසබීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. Domex.
Tonight on the table, the government is still mulling an approach to the IMF.
We are open to all the institutions and all the ideas.
No to planned cuts. The PUCSL shuts down the electricity board's request.
We hope that these scheduled power cuts will not take place, and especially during the time that students are getting ready for their A-levels within next couple of weeks to come.
But the CEB continues load shedding. Exploring the untapped, World Bank expert sees a silver lining in Sri Lanka's current woes.
More than in other countries, Sri Lanka has the opportunity to come stronger out of this crisis.
Change in rulebook. New study shows COVID patients can infect others beyond the quarantine period. All that and much more coming up on First at 9 this Tuesday, 1st of February 2022.
තියක් දක්වා ඉස්සොරි නැති 100% සුසිනිඳු කෙස් කලමක් ලබා දේ. Dove Anti-Dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanai. Now, the government is open to all institutions and ideas when it comes to resolving the country's debt issues. This is what Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana said as he was questioned whether there were any talks of turning to the International Monetary Fund for assistance. Now, the Cabinet co-spokesperson was also quizzed on whether the national anthem will be sung in Tamil language as well during the February 4th Independence Day celebrations.
Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa recently said that the government is exploring all options when it comes to restructuring the country's debt and is also mulling the option of approaching the International Monetary Fund amid its foreign reserve issues. It was put to the cabinet co-spokesperson whether the cabinet actually discussed reaching out to the IMF during yesterday's cabinet meeting.
There was no specific discussion about said topic during yesterday's cabinet meeting, but that was a constant discussion that we've been speaking about. Yes, we are open to all the institutions and all the ideas. So we have been speaking to IMF as well over a period of time, and it's our government during His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa's time which has obtained the highest amount of loan from International Monetary Fund. So we keep our doors open, and also at the same time we speak to World Bank, Asian Development Bank, also other agencies. So we have honored the first $500 million repayment this year. Yes, we need to pay another $1 billion by June. We are trying to manage the situation. Also at the same time, we are trying to restructure. We are in discussion with all the agencies. Hopefully, we should be able to manage the current crisis within 6 months' time down the line.
Recently, Tamil political parties led by the Tamil National Alliance sent a letter to the Indian Prime Minister calling on the regional superpower to intervene in the implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in Sri Lanka. With the move coming under heavy criticism for not seeking talks with the Sri Lankan president first, the cabinet co-spokesperson was asked whether an audience will be given to the Tamil political parties with the head of state to discuss their issues.
They are part and parcel of the Sri Lankan social ethnic fabric, and they are citizens of this country. TNA is a legal political party of this country. They can meet the president of the country as and when they wish. So it's a matter of making a request, and we are also very open-minded about all these issues. That's why Foreign Minister himself and also Honorable Minister of Justice, they personally visited these areas, and they are taking personal interest to ensure that Tamils of this country, they have their grievances. Yes, we understand that over a long period of time, certain issues are not settled for a long period. We are specifically addressing those issues, and also His Excellency the President and his government is quite open-minded about their issues, and we want to settle them forever.
Then came a most sensitive question. Will the Sri Lanka national anthem be sung in Tamil language during the 74th Independence Day celebrations, set to be held on Friday?
I can't provide an answer at this particular moment, but given the backdrop, we will ensure that we'll do everything possible from the government side to ensure that there's peace and reconciliation amongst the Tamils, Singles and Muslims in this country. That's the policy of the government.
In the meantime, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved the proposal to strike an agreement between Sri Lanka Petroleum Development Authority and Greenstat Hydrogen India Private Limited to conduct a feasibility study on the pilot project for generating green hydrogen using floating solar and wind. Greenstat Hydrogen India Private Limited is an affiliated body of Greenstat AS of Norway. The move comes in line with the government's policy decision of decarbonization by 2050. The Cabinet was also made aware of 4 mobile service and reconciliation programs organized by the Ministry of Justice, centering Jaffna and Kilinochchi in the northern province, Bariklo in the eastern province, Mathur in the southern province, and Nuvareli in the central province. The relevant programs have already been worked off in Jaffna and Kilinochchi from the 26th to the 30th of January this year. The publishing of the surcharge tax bill in the Government Gazette and to submit it to the Parliament thereafter too was green-lighted by the Cabinet. The Budget 2022 proposed to impose a one-off 25% surcharge tax on persons or companies earning taxable income more than 2 billion rupees for the assessment year 2020-2021, and the Attorney General has cleared the move.
Now, the Public Utilities Commission is hopeful that there won't be any need for scheduled power cuts, especially during preparation for the advanced level examination. It also turned the Electricity Board's request for a scheduled power cut down yet again today, as the third generator of the Norotchole coal power plant, which was added to the grid yesterday, had to be taken off once again.
Today, the third generator of the Norotchole coal power plant, which was under repair for some time but added to the national grid yesterday after repairs, was taken off the grid once more. With the move depriving 270 megawatts from the national grid, power interruptions occurred in several areas of the island during the day.
මට ලැබුණු ආරංචිය අනුව අද 4 වෙනකොට ඒ පොඩි නඩත්තු කටයුතු ඉවර කරලා සාමාන්‍ය මධ්‍යම රාත්‍රී වෙනකොට මෙය නැවතත් ආරම්භ කරලා නැෂනල් ග්‍රිඩ් එකට දාන්න අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු ඔක්කොම සම්පාදනය කරලා තිනවා. එතන තියෙන්නේ නඩත්තු කටයුතු සඳහා తాවකාලිකව නතර කිරීමක්. ඒක ඒ 4 වෙනි ප්ලාන්ට් එක බිඳ වැටීමක් නෙවෙයි. ඊට අමතරව මම සොජිට්ස් පවර් ප්ලාන්ට් ඒක අපිට මම දැන් 4 වෙනිදා පාන්දර වෙනකොට ඒක නැවතත් අපේ විදුලි පද්ධතියට එකතු වීමට නියමිතයි.
Until the said power plants are added to the national grid, the Ceylon Electricity Board has requested permission from the PUCSL for scheduled power cuts today in order to manage supply of power during peak hours. However, the PUCSL had denied the request.
They have cited that during the daytime that they can manage the demand and supply, which is almost around 2000 megawatts. And in the night peak time, they are looking at around 200 shortage of power supply during the time of around 6 to 9. So therefore, they have proposed this schedule, which the Commission has declined to give the approval. Therefore, we hope that this scheduled power cuts will not take place, and especially during the time that students are getting ready for their A-levels within next couple of weeks to come.
Due to the high electricity demands during peak hours, the CB said that there can be 1-hour power cuts between 6:30 pm and 8:30 pm today. The reason was load shedding, meaning an automatic interruption to power if and when the demand exceeds the supply. This is different to scheduled power cuts, as the latter means a planned interruption to power based on the estimated demand and supply.
The proposal that we are given to CB is to use the bulk suppliers' standby generators to generate power during this peak time, thus not having the scheduled power cuts to be approved by the Commission.
Meanwhile, over the weekend, Minister of Power Gamini Lokuge revealed that cabinet approval will be sought for emergency power purchases from private plants. On the matter, Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana had this to say during today's Cabinet media briefing.
හදිසි අවශ්‍යතාවයන් වෙනුවෙන් විදුලි මිලදී ගැනීමක් කරන්න සිදු වුණොත් ඒක සිදු කිරීම සඳහා ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය එකඟතාවය ලැබිලා තිබෙනවා. හැබැයි සඳහන් වෙලා තිබිච්ච විදියට අදාළ පෞද්ගලික විදුලි බලාගාර වලින් ලබා දීලා තිබෙන කොන්දේසියක් තමයි වසර 3කට අඛණ්ඩව විදුලිය ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා එකඟ විය යුතුයි කියන කාරණය. ඒකට රාජ්‍ය එකඟ නැහැ. ඒකට ජනාධිපතිතුමා සඳහන් කරේ ඉතාම පැහැදිලිවම ඒ වෙනුවෙන් අවශ්‍ය කාල සීමාවලදී පමණක් විදුලිය අවශ්‍ය වුණොත් මිලදී ගැනීම සඳහා එකඟතාවයට පැමිණෙන්නට නැවත සාකච්ඡා කරන්න කියලා විදුලි බල ඇමතුමාට ලබා දුන්නා. ඒ අතරේදී මෙතෙක් හඳුනාගත් දාන පෞද්ගලික විදුලි ප්‍රභාවයන්ට අමතරව ඕනම කෙනෙකුට ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් විදිහට නැවත ටෙන්ඩර් කැඳවීමක් කරන්න කියලාත් විදුලි බල ඇමතුමාට ජනාධිපතිතුමා උපදෙස් දුන්නා.
Further, the cabinet co-spokesperson also spoke about the apparent pushback from the electricity sector officials to embrace renewable energy even in the backdrop when the government intends to fulfill 70% of the island's electricity requirement via renewable energy sources by 2030.
අපේ රජය එන්නටත් පෙර ආතුව ඉඳලා යෝජනා අතිවිශාල සංඛ්‍යාවක් ඉදිරිපත් වෙලා තිබෙනවා සූර්ය බල ශක්තිය පිළිබඳව ඒ වගේම සුළං පිළිබඳව අනෙකුත් ප්‍රභවයන් පිළිබඳව හැබැයි මේවා විවිධ කරුණු කාරණා කියමින් ජාතික පද්ධතියට එකතු කර ගැනීම ක්‍රමානුකූලව සංවිධානාත්මකව කල්තබන තත්ත්වයක් මේ රටේ තියෙන බව ඔබට හොඳටම පැහැදිලි වෙනවා. ඊයේත් මම දැක්ක ප්‍රවෘත්ති සාකච්ඡාවකදී සමහර පුද්ගලයෝ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා මේක 70%කට අපි යන්න ආණ්ඩුව කිව්වට අපිට එහෙම යන්න බෑ මේකට සැලැස්මක් අවශ්‍යයි අපිට මේක කරන්න බෑ කියන මතය තමයි මේ රටේ සමහර මේ හා සම්බන්ධ වගකිව යුතු නිලධාරීන් සිටින්නේ. ඉතින් ඔබට බොහොම පැහැදිලි ඔවුන්ගේ අරමුණත් අපිට බොහොම පැහැදිලි. පසුගිය කාලයේ තිස්සේම මේ රටේ අලුතෙන් බලාගාර කිසිවක් හැදිලා නැහැ වගේම තමයි ලෝකෙම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරන.
Meanwhile, the Terra Nevis group of Cyprus has submitted an uninvited proposal to supply the crude oil requirement for the Savugaskanda refinery beyond July 2022, with necessary steps taken to procure crude oil from the Savugaskanda oil refinery until then. It comes with a 180-day credit facility. With the cabinet-appointed Special Standing Procurement Committee having evaluated it, the committee has recommended the initial procurement of 450,000 barrels of crude, which has been given the cabinet nod. Further, the cabinet has also given the nod for the Ministry of Energy to purchase 40,000 metric tons of diesel from the IOC. It comes after the Energy Ministry held talks with the IOC to procure the said quantity of diesel and a similar shipment of petrol from IOC.
Now then, headline inflation has increased to 14.2% in January from 12.1% in December 2021. With that, the island's inflation rate has become the fastest in Asia, overtaking Pakistan. Meanwhile, on an annual average basis, the Colombo Consumer Price Index increased to 6.9% in January this year from 6% in December. Inflation was driven by monthly increase of prices of items in both food and non-food categories. Food inflation increased to 25% in January 2022 from 22.1% in December 2021, while non-food inflation increased to 9.2% in January 2022 from 7.5% in December last year. Monthly change of CCPI recorded at 2.43% in January this year due to price increases in items of both food and non-food categories, which were 1.15% and 1.28% respectively. Within the food category, key increases were observed in prices of rice, fresh fruit, milk powder and bread. Further, prices of items in the non-food category recorded increases, mainly to price increases in the transport, housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuel, education and restaurant and hotel subcategories during the month. The core inflation increased to 9.9% in January from 8.3% in December last year. Moreover, annual average core inflation increased to 5% in January this year from 4.4% in December 2021. Now then, the World Bank chief economist for South Asian region, Hans Timmer, believes that Sri Lanka has the opportunity to come out of the present travail stronger than most countries. He says that Sri Lanka is able to do this if the country unlocks the untapped potential of the informal and services sectors, which also stand to give the country a comprehensive, or in fact comparative advantage over many other countries in the region.
An economic forum was organized jointly by the World Bank and Nextgen Sri Lanka, titled Sri Lanka Growth Strategy 2020, yesterday. Speaking at the forum, chief economist of the South Asian region of the World Bank, Hans Timmer, gave his opinion on where Sri Lanka stands at the moment in a realistic point of view, and also highlighted key positive elements the country should capitalize on.
This was and still is a supply shock, not a demand shock. That means that pure stimulus doesn't help. It starts with closing a part of the economy and disruption in global supply chains, but then it continues because some firms, they don't survive. Demand has shifted. The economy has to adjust to that. And as a result, you see in Sri Lanka, but across the world, inflationary pressures. You can't just rely on stimulus, but you do need relief efforts, trying to help households that have lost their income, trying to help companies survive. And it was in an environment where the global monetary policy was very loose, so it was easy to organize these support measures. And that you saw in Sri Lanka also a huge increase in social protection and also an increase in credit supply. But that policy was very difficult for Sri Lanka to sustain. And the reason is that Sri Lanka already for decades had twin deficits. Globally, monetary policy is tightening, commodity prices are going up, then this policy results in balance of payments problem. It is important to realize that These balance of payments problems and fiscal challenges, they did not originate overnight. It took many decades to come to this position, and they will not be solved overnight. But it is important that the short-term interventions are firmly grounded in a long-term strategy. Focus on long-term sustainability, focus on equity, and focus on adjusting to new demands, not just on supporting old production.
Timur, however, said that Sri Lanka could get out of the crisis if it can unlock its potential in the services and informal sector, as well as among young people.
In my view, more than in other countries, Sri Lanka has the opportunity to come stronger out of this crisis. The informal sector was hit disproportionately hard. The informal sector was vulnerable because they were not well integrated into markets, little or no access to credit and low productivity. And the system of what I would call a dual economy has kept Sri Lanka from growing faster for quite a long time. You have a system of well-connected and well-protected insiders in the formal sector, and then a large group of outsiders with limited access to credit, to markets. And in my view, the crisis can actually change that because of the new developments in digital technologies that took really a flight during the crisis. We have an opportunity now to give formal workers and firms much more access to markets and to finance.
The World Bank's chief economist for the South Asian region added that Sri Lanka has a comparative advantage not only in tourism, trade and logistics, but also in a new services economy that should be exploited.
Services as share of GDP is larger than in any country of the region. It has the highest share of service workers in manufacturing already. Interesting in Sri Lanka is that female labor force participation in services is really high. It increased now till 50% of the total labor force in services. That level of female labor force participation is twice as high as in other parts of SAR, the South Asia region. And when you look at our human capital index, which is based on the quality of education, the quality of healthcare, then Sri Lanka is in a better position than other countries in South Asia. Sri Lanka has at the moment now the highest vaccination rate.
We'll see you shortly. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, a new study has found that COVID patients are capable of infecting others well beyond their recommended quarantine period. Some, it says, transmitted the virus for more than 2 months. The development comes at a time when Sri Lanka's daily caseload is on the rise, with more than 1,000 new cases recorded in the last 3 days, with today's figure coming in at 1,137.
Over the last 2 days, the daily COVID caseload breached 1,000. It was back on the 26th of September last year that the country saw new cases of such volume. But back then, the daily cases were on the way down, owing to quarantine curfews and other restrictions put in place. Meanwhile, studies conducted by the University of Sri Jayawardenepura have led to the conclusion that the COVID variant Omicron is responsible for a lion's share of new cases found in the island. With many Omicron patients being either asymptomatic or showing just mild symptoms, tracing the source of infection is also proving to be difficult. Now the question being asked is if there is community transmission. The expert view is, seeking a definition on the present situation is futile.
I think scientifically it is extremely difficult to prove that the community transmission itself, because the cluster transmission cannot be established due to the large number of people who are having mild or asymptomatic are there, and there's a possibility of proportion of such persons in the community, and as a result it is extremely difficult to, unlike previous days, to link each and every new case to a previous case. So therefore it is scientifically not possible to exclude the cluster transmission. However, we know that large number of cases are emerging from the community, and rather than arguing on whether the community transmission is there or not, what is important is to adhere to the health guidelines and make sure that you are not contributing to the spread of the disease.
Meanwhile, the Public Health Inspectors Union says that COVID cases within schools as well as among expectant mothers are on the rise. In the meantime, a study conducted by researchers affiliated with the Pasteur US-based scientific platform suggests that some people infected with SARS-CoV-2 may be able to transmit the virus for longer than the recommended quarantine period. The study involved 38 Brazilian patients who were followed on a weekly basis between April and November in 2020. According to the researchers, 2 men and a woman of the 38 cases tracked were atypical in their sense that the virus was continuously detected in them for more than 70 days. Based on their results, they say that about 8% of people infected by SARS-CoV-2 may be able to transmit the virus for more than 2 months without necessarily manifesting any symptoms during the final stage of the infection. Further, they say that there were patients who remained positive for 71 to 232 days. On the vaccination front, a considerable public turnout was seen today at the vaccination centre operated by the Sri Lanka Army in the Derana, which offered the booster dose. Further, mobile vaccinations conducted by the Tri-Forces was worked off in 15 districts today in a bid to increase the booster recipients. By last evening, the number of people who had obtained the booster dose stood at 5,261,005.
Now the reports have very clearly indicated that those who got infected and finally ended up in complications and ICU care and oxygen demand, majority are still those who have not got any vaccination or those who have failed to get their booster vaccination are the people who are really getting into this category. So therefore, it is extremely important to get the booster vaccine as early as possible.
A train collided with a three-wheeler today in Gaul, killing all 4 people who were travelling in it, including the driver. The deceased are members of the same family. The collision took place at around 11:30 a.m. at the Rilama junction in Bussa, Gaul. The victims of the incident were identified as residents from the area of Parnavatta in Bussa. A CCTV camera from a house located opposite the level crossing had caught the incident. The footage shows the three-wheeler carelessly crossing the unguarded level crossing, even though it appears that the train was almost upon them when it started to cross. An eyewitness said that the three-wheeler driver may not have seen the signal properly due to glare and that there was no audio warning system in place. Even though the residents in the area had rushed the victims to the hospital, 3 had already succumbed, while the remaining victim died in hospital. Now, the Colombo High Court today acquitted Minister of Finance Basil Rajpaksha and former Director General of the Divinaguma Department, Kitsiri Ranawaka, from almanac distribution case, also known as Lith case. The court determined that the almanacs were printed in line with the department's objectives.
The Colombo High Court today acquitted Minister of Finance Basil Rajapaksa and former Director General of the Divinaguma Department, Kitsiri Ranawaka, from the 2015 almanacs distribution case, also known as the Lith distribution case. It was taken up before High Court Judge Damit Totavatta this morning. Minister Basil Rajapaksa and Kitsiri Ranawaka were accused of allegedly misappropriating funds from the Divinaguma Department to the tune of 29.4 million rupees to print 5 million almanacs with the image of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. This was allegedly supposed to be used as election propaganda material during the presidential election held in January 2015. Judge Totavatta stated that according to the evidence submitted, the process of printing almanacs has been a procedure ongoing since 2011 and is being carried out in accordance with the objectives of the department. He stated that with the presidential election due in January 2015, Chairman of the Election Commission had issued an order preventing the distribution of such almanacs in December 2014. He further stated that the almanacs were printed with the approval of the Treasury in accordance with the funds allocated under the Appropriation Act. As such, the judge ordered that Minister Basil Rajapaksa and Kitsiri Ranawaka be acquitted from all charges and their possible travel bans be lifted.
The Foreign Ministry today refuted media reports which alleged Finance Minister Basil Rajpaksha considered that the government purchased weapons from North Korea using black market dollars. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said that Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires spoke with his cabinet colleague, Finance Minister Basil Rajpaksha, in this regard, who has categorically denied the comments attributed to him in the said news item. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the all-share price index lost 87.38 points to end at 12,922.12 today, with the S&P SL20 index ending at 4,344.42, following a loss of 53.15 points. The market turnover was 9.7 billion rupees. Now here's Dimantha Mathi with a brief report on today's market performance.
Today we saw again negativity in the market after just one day of positive outlook. What we experienced today is that at the start of the day, overall index went into negative territory and closed with a decline of 87 points. So with that, the index closed at 12,922 points. However, with the positivity during the first half of the day, we saw a very strong level of turnover, close to 10 billion rupees of turnover, and even the number of transactions were extremely high, 73,000 transactions during the day. So overall, we saw significant interest in the life insurance companies, specifically selected companies have excessive buying interest that was trending from last week itself.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.